Good evening, everyone. Hello. I am back with another video today. And yeah, God bless you all. Hope you're having a nice day. Today we'll be doing, as you saw from the title, the video, we'll be doing a Ghost of Tsushima review. I recently played the game and I am going to be playing. I also played Yota as well, so I'll also be making another video of that one later on. So I'll also be posting that in the future as well. So keep your heads up on that. But today we are just going to focus on Ghost of Tsushima. So please like and subscribe, and pass it on to anyone who thinks this information might be super helpful. So I guess we'll go on to into the depth of the story, or onto the details of this review. As I always say, the four things that I always usually cover in my reviews are the story, the world, the combat, and the side attractions. So that's what we'll be focusing on. So first things first, the story of Ghost of Tsushima. So just a preview. If you do not know what a samurai is, or what a lord or clan leaders are, you don't know much about it, that information, just do a little research. Check up on Google. I believe just reading a little bit of that information might be super helpful. I watch a lot of anime, so you usually see things like samurais and lords about that stuff in the anime that I watch. So I do have some information about all that stuff. So I was, a little bit understand what's going on throughout the story. So I suggest you do the same. I think it won't take too long, so you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, back onto the story. So the story is like this: there is an island called Tsushima, and it is being invaded by a group of Mongols. Um, I don't think you really need to know who the Mongols come from, but they are just a group of enemies that are invading. The objective is to take over the island and use the island's resources to take over the mainland of Japan. And the samurai of that island are banding together to defend that island. You will play as a samurai named Jin Sakai, and you will go join in that war. On your first battle, you will obviously, you will lose everything. Your home will be taken over by the Mongols. Your only relative will be taken away as well. You would have reached very hot rock bottom as such, and after that, you're gonna have to, probably gonna have to be put in a very difficult position where you have to abandon that samurai code of honor that was what you used to grow up on, and abandon it into the way of like a shinobi. And you do more sneak attacks, assassinations, and stuff like that. Things that samurais don't usually do. In order to save your uncle, your uncle, which is your relative, and the island itself. So throughout the story, you'll be met with that difficult choice, and you lose and gain some stuff throughout that whole entire story. It's quite interesting. I believe each and every cutscene and the way it's presented is quite amazing as well. You really feel the depth of the emotion of the loss that people suffer through war. You get to really see a very dark side of what happens to the loser side of a war that happens, and it's very sad and unfortunate. And you get to see the struggles that your character gets to go through as they transition from samurai into a shinobi. And it's tough stuff. So it's tough for him, and I believe you will just genuinely just get hooked, especially by the way the story is presented throughout all the scenes. It's touching and emotional, and it always just keeps you hooked. So I think people might generally just enjoy the story itself. I also did play the DLC, which covers Ike Island, the island where his father died. He was killed by the people there. You have to travel to that island as well after what happened in Tsushima, and you encounter the shadows of the past, and you have to overcome those shadows so that you can save the people of that island, the same people that killed your father as well. So yeah, it's a very emotional as well. So I think you also might like it as well. Just a small DLC, so it's a very short story, so don't expect anything too long. And then I think that covers most of the story. I won't spoil anything else, but you will lose friends and gain friends, and that's what happens usually in war. So now on to the world itself. The world itself of Tsushima is really quite big and imaginative, and it's very beautiful. as you explore throughout the area, solve clues, and look for various legendary items. Which I suggest you go look for those things because they give you like super good buffs, super armor, and cool new fighting sword techniques and techniques that you can use in battle. But yeah, just generally exploring the area is just generally beautiful. The flowers, just and riding on your horse, it all just feels so real, so beautiful and amazing. And even the areas that were taken over full of burnt and fire, you get to really see the damage done and the people's lives that are ruined. It's very sad and gruesome. But as I said, I think for a game that was made back then, like in 2021, I believe, yeah, it was still pretty good. I think the way it was designed, presented, and as I said, it really helped support how the cutscenes represent to everyone else. So I think just how it was all done, it was just amazingly beautiful. I think you might even you wouldn't mind just walking to a whole long destination by horseback, going through various areas. You do meet some enemies from time to time, but that's just part of the course of like an open world game, just to keep the player on their toes. But yeah, you can actually get quite lost, so just make sure you know your bearings very well and how to use it. Then I guess we'll now go on to the combat of the story. So the combat of Tsushima is a little bit different from the other games that we usually play. There is still the basic, dodge and counter and parry that you see from some sword fighting games, and you most likely see those in this game as well. The difference is that you fight different enemies, which use different from sword and shield, big man with big man with spears, and also big guys, you call them brutes, with other different types of weapons. And you will have like different sword styles. So as I said, if you're samurai, you technically your main weapon of choice is a katana, and you'll be using that katana in very different ways. So there'll be stone stands, water stands, wind stands, and moon stands, and each of these stands are very effective against a certain type of enemy. So you, as a basic part of the game, you should learn how to, for A, get all your stances and level them up to their best efficiency. I think just going around saving people, dealing with Mongols on the streets, will generally help you level up and get more technique points, which you can use to help level up your stances and stuff like that. And you also need to take down leaders of certain areas to also be able to unlock stances as well. But stances are very important. You will need them when you're dealing with certain enemies that are very hard to kill unless you know the right stance to take them down with. So I think it's best to just see for yourself, but the enemies themselves are a bit also quite difficult. I also quite enjoyed their auto attacks when they say dojo, dojo, dojo. So it was quite fun. It was quite funny to hear them all say that as they shooted their arrows. But yeah, I think the enemies were quite interesting. I think well, they're quite interesting. I'm just saying, but yeah, fun to do. Fun. They're engaging, difficult, and it also depends on the difficulty that you set as well. So if you put it on super easy, the enemies might not be that hard to deal with. They might also obviously might be difficult if you put on legendary. So yeah, you can pick whichever level you want. I picked easy since I was just mainly playing the game for the story. But yeah, the enemies were not that hard to challenge. I guess the EK Island people were a bit difficult because of that person that kept on saying, which gave the whole area, all the enemies in that area, big buffs. Then there is the side attractions. So the side attractions, as I said, include things like side things that happened that you just like, but you couldn't say that were generally part of the story. So I believe like the side stories, which will be focused on other characters or side characters in the story as well that support the main character, are very interesting to do. You get to help those side characters achieve their goals and go through losses, and it's just like a small peek of it's a nice way if you're tired of the main story or you feel a little bit bored, and yeah, the side stories are quite interesting. The stories themselves are quite interesting, and I believe you get a few good benefits, a few masks and armor, a bow, and stuff like that. But in general, it's pretty good. I think you would generally like them. I also generally like doing them as well. I do encourage them to do those stories as well. I believe they'll just give you extra resources that you need. And I think it's also super important that you also do like take down Mongol hideouts and stuff like that because they give you resources, and those resources help build up your character. You can if you can find that right build for yourself and just stick with it. But yeah, in general, just try to get as much resources as you can so that you can level the armors that you need for a specific situation. For maybe an armor for melee fighting, an armor for shooting with an arrow, and maybe an armor for sneaking around. You usually unlock those all throughout the whole entire story, bit by bit. But yeah, I think the storyline was generally good as well. The bloody scenes were definitely bloody, and you get really see a lot of bloody scenes there, and you get to hear stories of how other people got taken out, which makes you it made me and my roommate cringe. And trust me, they were very not pleasant. I would not want to talk about that stuff, and I would not wish any of that on my worst enemy. So, in general, that is the general view of the whole entire game. If you ask me, would you recommend this game to anyone? I guess I would recommend this game. It has a very good, touching story. If a young kid wants to play this game, I do suggest that you take off the blood effects off because when the game it gets very very bloody if you put the blood effects on, and I don't think that is very suitable for audiences. But the way people die here is very bit gruesome. You when you see someone's head get cut off, you definitely see that happen, and it is shocking. You could say terrifying if you want to say it like that. But yeah, but other than that, I guess those are all major points I can just generally talk about the game. If you like it, you can play it. But yeah, I hope my review helps you make a decision on playing the game in the future. And may you have just a blessed day today. So goodbye, everyone. If you like it, please share it with friends that you might think it might be helpful. And also, please, like and subscribe. And thank you. And have a nice day.